25 days to go in what is undeniably a heart-pounding, white-knuckle, tight presidential race. And that can mean one thing. It's time to bring in the closers, time to unleash the Democrats' singular political talent to make an urgent case for this moment.
What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you, Pennsylvania. I don't understand that. Because there is absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself. I've said it before. Donald Trump is a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. You've got the tweets in all caps, the ranting and the raving about crazy conspiracy theories. You got the 2-hour speeches, word salad, just, you know, it's like Fidel Castro, just on and on. Constant attempts to sell you stuff. Who does that? Selling you gold sneakers and a $100,000 watch and most recently a Trump Bible. You know, he wants you to buy the Word of God, Donald Trump edition. Got his name right there next to Matthew and Luke. I mean, you could not make this stuff up. If you saw it on Saturday Night Live, you'd say, well, no, that's going too far. No, he's doing that. It's crazy. And the reason he does it is because all he cares about is his ego and his money and his status. He's not thinking about you. If Donald Trump does not care that a mob might attack his own vice president, do you think he cares about you?
President Barack Obama at that rally last night in Pittsburgh doing what he does better than just about anyone, shrinking Donald Trump way down to size, puncturing Trump's toxic, divisive, self-centered nonsense by laying out the facts and using humor. But President Obama didn't just deploy humor. He also did something rather rare for him, showing a flash of anger, of frustration that is deeply relatable. Here he is talking about Trump's lies about hurricane relief efforts.
The idea of intentionally trying to deceive people in their most desperate and vulnerable moments. And my question is, when did that become okay? I'm not looking for applause right now. I want to ask Republicans out there, you know, people who are conservative, who didn't vote for me, who didn't agree with me. I had friends who disagreed with me on every issue. When did that become okay? Why would we go along with that?
You know who he's talking to. When did that become okay, guys? What President Obama did last night and what he will continue to do as he campaigns, as he barnstorms for Vice President Kamala Harris across the battleground states in the coming weeks, is to rally enthusiasm and support for her campaign, yes, but to also give voters a permission structure to do what he did, to shrink Trump down to size, a permission structure to call out what's gone on for 9 years now, the normalizing of Trump's pathological need to, as President Obama puts it, deceive people in their most desperate and vulnerable moments. And then, again, this only a political athlete of his caliber can do. President Obama went in for a surgical political strike and decided to speak at a public event directly to African-American men in Pittsburgh.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities, as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. When on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, who's had to work harder and do more and overcome. And that's on one side. And on the other side, you have someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person. And you're thinking about sitting out, and you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that. Because part of it makes me think, I'm speaking to men directly, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for it. These aren't ordinary times, and these are not ordinary elections. You like your Michelle's not here.
Straight talk, a direct call to action for President Obama to black men, call to action to anyone who cares about the truth, and empathy from a messenger who is second to none in terms of rallying a winning coalition and speaking to the conscience of our great country. It's where we start today with Democratic strategist and president of Brilliant Corners Research, Cornell Belcher, and with me at the table for the hour, president of the National Action Network, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, the Reverend Al Sharpton. What'd you think?
I thought it was great. I really think that President Obama spoke directly in both settings that you showed. And I think in a way that only he could do it. Let's not forget that he was the president during the good times or better times that Donald Trump tries to take credit for. He handed Donald Trump a stable economy that he undermined. So all you have to say to black men is look at what unemployment had went down to under Obama. Look where it went under Trump. Look where student debt went. Look where criminal justice went. Trump was president during George Floyd, during Breonna Taylor, during Ahmaud Arbery, all of this. What did he do? What did Joe Biden and Harris do when they got in office on cases? So if you look at the facts, they clearly can't say that there's a reason to go with Donald Trump or sit this out and let a guy who's been antithetical. Central Park 5 wanted to have people executed that were innocent and never said anything different. Says he stands by it now. Call black nations, African nations, and Haiti S-hole countries. On and on. As late as yesterday saying if Harris gets elected, the whole country will be like Detroit, which is racial overtones then. So I understand black young men that feel disaffected, but you're going to be disaffected against somebody that has done everything but call you the N-word in public? Yeah, it's got to be some misogyny there. It has to be some, are you against women? And I think that President Obama was the right one to bring the message. The other thing that I think that we keep missing here is that Donald Trump is not a newcomer. He has a record. Why do you think he's going to do now what he didn't do in the 4 years he was there for blacks? I mean, he's telling blacks he'll do what? You had 4 years to do it, and you did nothing but call us names and ignore George Floyd and others until you went in front of a church with a Bible and lectured the protesters and never said a word about the police who on tape killed a man unarmed.